Hey everyone, how's it going? My name's Tom Froese, and I'm an illustrator and a top teacher on Skillshare, where I've helped over 100,000 students unlock the world of commercial illustration. Welcome to the channel. So happy New Year. It's the first week, the first work week of the new year, and I want to post a video every week. And so here I am showing up. It's been a really busy week, so it's been hard to find a moment to actually write content for today's episode. But I did spend the last 3 days writing an annual review. I do this every year, and it's just a chance to reflect on how the past year went, look at some of the goals I set. Did I meet them? And then, of course, celebrate some of the wins and the highlights from the past year as well. And then finally, to set some goals for the coming year so that I can do all this again next year in next year's review. So I thought I'd just share a little bit of this, my review with you in video format. It is a longer review, so maybe I can kind of break it down or summarize it more quickly here. We'll see how things go. So why don't I just call up my browser here, and we can go through. And there's me, and I'm holding the previous year's numbers. And the one is also a pencil. Thought that was clever. So yeah, I'll just start by saying that the past year was an excellent year. I enjoyed my work a lot more, and I earned actually more than I ever have before. This is my most financially successful past year. And what's interesting about that is that I actually failed to meet a lot of the goals that I set. The biggest thing about 2021 was that it was the year that I became a writer. It was the year that I wanted to dedicate as much as possible to writing my book. This is a book that I've been wanting to write a book for illustrators for years. And I finally made that decision last year to like work hard at it. And so what I did was I set a time every single day to write and post on to my Medium blog. And that was just because while I had my book idea in my head, sort of, it didn't feel real to me. And the only thing I knew how to do was to just write for an audience on a blog every day toward this goal of writing the book. And out of that, I came up with a book concept and a whole bunch of other just side topics, just, from my experience as an illustrator. And long story short, the book didn't happen. I wanted to have a full manuscript by the year's end. And today I actually don't have that at all. So a lot of good came out of just the act of writing on Medium, though, and I'm going to just talk about that now. So the first really important thing that happened was that even though I didn't write a full book last year, I showed up almost every day for 6 months to my Medium blog writing. And because of that, some good articles came out of it, good enough that they got picked up by bigger magazines, including Medium's own The Forge. That's one of their kind of magazines, and they have a very big audience. So a couple of my articles got exposure on that, which was really good. And one of my articles actually ended up I'm going to just grab it here, ended up in this episode, in this issue of Uppercase Magazine. If you don't know about Uppercase Magazine, it's one of my favorite magazines. It's based out of Canada. And it's just a beautiful print mag dedicated mostly to creative things like illustration. It's very eclectic. It's always just really fun to read and beautiful images to look at. But what I want to celebrate is that one of my articles became, a full article in the magazine covering at least 4 pages here, 2 spreads. And I just think that that's a huge win. I mean, that's just amazing. I've always wanted to have some kind of feature in this magazine. I thought it would end up being illustration, but it ended up being my writing. And so, funny side story is I was talking to my daughter, my older daughter. She's 9 years old, and we were talking about what I do for a living and stuff like that. And I said, I'm also a writer. She's like, no, you're not a writer. And I'm like, I'm a writer. And she's like, yeah, but you haven't written any books. But I said, a big part of what I do is writing. I mean, that's part of being an illustrator, actually. And so I was proud to be able to present some proof to her, say, look, this article says words by Tom Froese. And then finally she believed me that her dad is a writer. Anyway, funny story, side story. But so those two things came out of writing every day. One is that, or sorry, that's one of the things that came out of writing every day, was that my writing got recognized by publications. Second thing that came out of it was landing on a topic for my book, but then realizing kind of partway through the year that I needed to pivot book effort to into being a class. So what I did is I took all the writing I did for my book and I turned it into the content for my next class. I have a full script. It's ready to start recording, and it will be the first class I produce in 2021. So what is the book? The book is about the illustration process, particularly stepping your clients through your illustration process as an illustrator. And the problem that illustrators have, especially those starting out, is, it's one thing to be able to know how to illustrate in the technical sense, but how do you apply that skill toward someone else's problem, particularly our clients? How do you make them happy with your work? And some of the pain points that come out of the process of illustrating for clients is like they keep asking for changes. You don't really know what the client wants. You feel like you're reading their mind. And so my process is set up to help you build a strong foundation at the very beginning so that you can know what you're illustrating for your client from the get-go. You have some clear goalposts, and then you can always refer to those as you go along. I call this the 6 stages of illustrating for clients. It's kind of a dry title. It's a working title, but this is what I ended up with. And this is going to be the premise of my next class. I have an editor who's been helping me write and keep the content as concise as possible. Spoiler alert, it's actually not that concise. It's going to be a longer class still, but there's just so much content that we both agreed we needed to keep in. But I really feel, and my editor shared this sentiment with me, that the topic is important, and what I've written is going to be very helpful to anyone who wants to be a commercial illustrator. This is a big tangent though, because we're talking about my year in review, not just the book, but that was like such a huge focus of my year, such a huge part of my activity was writing this book and then pivoting and writing the class. And my first draft that I sent to my editor ended up being 52 pages, 24,000 words. And so God bless my editor for reading and wading through all those words and kind of just sticking with it with me, which was awesome. So what else can I share with you from my report? Skillshare, I wanted to produce 2 or 3 classes. I ended up technically producing 2. One was the printmaking inspired illustration in Photoshop, and the other one was the one palette illustrator. Now, the printmaking inspired illustration in Photoshop was a live encore. So while I taught the content, Skillshare actually produced and put together the video. And so that didn't really count as one of my own kind of self-produced classes. The one that I did do, and I'm very proud of it, was the one palette illustrator. Some of you have been along on the journey with me. As I created it, saw that I was really struggling to just land on exactly how to teach a class. And those of you who have taken the class will, of course, see that I did it. And I feel like it was a big success. And I can say that with a certain level of certainty, especially with how many students have been taking the class and posting their projects. And I can see that they're really actually like being helped by the content. But also, I just want to celebrate that this class became one of the top 10 illustration classes of 2021 on Skillshare. So thank you everyone who took the class, who did a review, who hyped it on their Instagram account, who did the project, who posted it. It's a huge honor. Even though I didn't produce the 2 to 3 classes, the one that I did, I poured my everything into it, and it paid off. So big thing to celebrate there. Some more highlights from the year is, of course, here on YouTube, I showed up a lot more. The previous year, I had only done 14 videos. In 2021, I did 24 videos. And toward the end of the year, my frequency increased to almost 1 a week. And I'm going to try and keep that cadence from now on. And my goal for YouTube last year was to get up to 10,000 subs. And I ended up getting to 8,000 subscribers. but still huge success because at the start of 2021, I only had 4,000 subscribers. And at this point, early 2022, I have double that, over 8,000 subscribers. And so my audacious goal for 2022 by the year end is to have 30,000 subscribers. So thank you for watching these videos, for watching them to the end, for liking, subscribing to the channel, of course. All these things have really made this YouTube channel grow more. And my approach to content is really organic. I make and post each video every week. I don't kind of plan ahead too much, but I'm always trying to write high value content, even if the production value isn't always like super slick. My focus is on making content that is timely and relevant and authentic, like kind of just from my actual real world experience. And with videos like today's, I'm really just showing up today. I didn't prepare my studio. I didn't do my hair or anything like that. Just showing up, trying to, today would be one of the videos that I would consider more on the authentic side of things, more day in the life, more, this is kind of real life. So kind of try and mix up the content. And I'm always curious in what you guys think. What kind of content do you most resonate with? Is it the more slick, highly produced ones where it's scripted and I'm very smooth in my speech and I include more visuals? Or are you more into these more real life type, authentic, less polished videos? I'm curious to know which of those two you guys appreciate the most, and maybe I can dig more into that as I keep making more content this year. Moving on, a huge thing that I did this year that I actually thought I would never do is create a Patreon. So I set up a Patreon, and you've probably heard me say this before. I don't like the Patreon model in the sense that I don't feel like I need your financial support. That's not what I want Patreon to do. I want to earn a living through making illustration and through teaching classes, basically providing value to people in exchange for money. But I also saw some value in setting up a Patreon finally, because I do get asked a lot of questions from people who, watch my videos or take my classes or see my Instagram posts. I also often get asked, do you provide any mentorship or coaching? And the answer has always been no. And so I thought maybe there's a way of flipping Patreon on its head, where instead of, me asking for your support, it would be a Patreon that would help me support you. And I've had a little bit of a fumbling start to this. Those of you who are my patrons right now will know that I've changed a few things in the first few months of this thing starting, and I'm just trying to find that balance of something I'm able to do on a continual, sustained basis that's actually helpful for you, and something that it doesn't suck up all of my time, because these things, if you overpromise in the benefits you're offering your patrons, it can really come back to bite you, and that did at first. And so I feel like I'm at a good place with that. If you want to learn more about my Patreon is patreon.com/Tom Froese. I'll leave a link in the show notes description. You know what I mean. So far, we're about 3 months into the Patreon, and I'm really enjoying meeting my metal tier patrons. These are bronze, silver, and gold. And these folks get a 30-minute chat with me either every month or every other month or once every few months. And it's been really nice. I really enjoy that opportunity to meet some of the people that I would consider my audience, kind of in real life, face to face. And I've also appreciated being able to kind of like get a sense of what kind of real questions is each illustrator really struggling with. Like, what are the things that they're going through in their work, and questions that I can help answer. And ultimately, while I'm helping these people I'm chatting with, I'm also selfishly learning a lot. I'm getting a lot of intelligence that I can apply to future content, future videos, future classes, and maybe even my book. So that was a big reason why I set up the Patreon, was to have a way of connecting more to my audience and understanding them more. So one of the big things about The Patreon was like, the question I had was like, okay, I have this Patreon. I have a way of people giving me support and me in exchange me giving them some kind of benefit. But what it was lacking was a sense of community between patrons, between members. Patreon doesn't really do that well. And what I discovered was this thing called Discord, which is kind of like Slack, or in a way, it's kind of like Facebook. It's like a way you can have like a message board that people can communicate on around a shared passion. And so I spent November kind of learning how to use the platform, and I even enlisted the help of one of my Patreon members, Carolyn Yu, and she helped me kind of set up the space, and she's going to be acting as the moderator, one of the admins on the Discord server, just to help keep the place a nice positive environment for patrons and actually non-patrons alike to come and talk about illustration together. And so, but you can learn more about that by going to patreon.com/TomFroze. And there's some information there about how to connect to the Discord server. Also leave a link in the video notes here where you can actually get right on over to the Discord server and join in. I should say that there is some exclusively patron-only access parts of Discord, but there's also a lot of it that's just available to everyone. You don't have to be a patron. And so it's a nice thing about it. So all are welcome. Come on over and check it out. In terms of client work, I did get more client work last year. In 2020, now, for obvious reasons, client work really just came to a halt. I could count the number of jobs on my two hands that I did in 2020. In 2021, there was a noticeable uptick in client requests, and I did take on more work. Another thing about 2020 was that I wasn't really enjoying illustrating. It didn't feel good to illustrate that year, and I was feeling very lost and directionless. And because I had so much more focus in 2021, I knew that my job was to be a writer. I was more selective about the kind of illustration I took on, and my criteria was that it had to be work I really was interested in doing for clients that I thought were cool, and I wanted to make sure that they kind of met a certain budget minimum. And so by being very strict to myself about these constraints, but what work I would take on, I really enjoyed my work a whole lot more. And I'm really proud of the work that I did end up doing. And so you can go over to the year in review post on Medium and check out some of those projects that I'm really proud of. And yeah, I think even though I didn't do a ton of client work last year, I did do more than the previous year. And I'm really happy with how it all went down. Another big win was that so in 2020, a book that I illustrated, The Castle the King Built with Nosy Crow, was published. And then last year it received a certificate of merit from 3x3 International Illustration Awards. So that was a nice big win. I always like to try and enter into awards every year. And it's always nice when something returns with some kind of recognition or an award of some kind. Another thing that happened last year was that my second title with Nosy Crow came out, and that was Mummies Unwrapped with the British Museum. And so this is just a shot of the cover, and that ended up getting picked up in French, Italian, Dutch, Spanish, and Catalan. And so that's awesome when a book gets, new publication deals, which always means more royalties and stuff like that. So that's really exciting. Life, some of you guys may know that I was evacuated due to a huge flood risk here. The region here in British Columbia was inundated with atmospheric rivers and mudslides, and a historic lake that had been dredged 100 years ago started to come back, and we got evacuated because it was highly likely that our own property would be inundated with a flood. And thankfully, it was not flooded, and the happy ending for us, but not such a happy ending for a lot of people. A lot of people kind of just about 2 kilometers to the west of where we live, they lost everything. And so what I ended up doing was creating this T-shirt in support of my own local town of Yarrow, and proceeds from this go to the flood recovery and relief efforts. Again, more just life stuff. I'm a runner, as a lot of you guys know, and I made some really important PRs. I don't want to bore you with the details, but if you're a runner, maybe you'll appreciate that I attempted a sub 3-hour marathon. I came pretty close. I came at 3 hours, 1 minute, 38 seconds. And I ran my first ultra marathon, which was 50 kilometers. And then this year in 2022, I'm signed up for a 50-mile ultra. So looking forward to that. So I talked about how I didn't meet a lot of my goals from 2021. And maybe I'll just quickly go over these and explain why I still think it's okay that I didn't. So I wanted to write a book and find a publisher, and I did not achieve this. And I've already described why I still managed to make a success out of that failure. I've talked about growing my YouTube audience and how that went. Another little silly goal that I had was to create wooden creations based on my illustrations. This is just a photo of one such creation. It's what I call a Swiss Army person. I wonder if I can show it to you guys here. These are just a couple of silly things that I made just playing around. I got a scroll saw, and the question was, how could I turn my characters that I illustrate into 3 dimensions? This is an earring holder that is a prototype that I made for my daughters. Big ears, you have like holes here, you can put the earrings in. So that was a silly goal that I had. So I did actually do some of that, not a lot, but I got started, and I have these things kind of looking at me in my studio, inspiring me to do it at some point when I have more time. I did not publish 2 to 3 classes as I'd hoped. So with Nosy Crow, I have a 3-book deal with them. So the first 2 books are in the bag. I have The Castle the King Built, Mummies Unwrapped, and then some undisclosed, undetermined 3rd title. And I wanted to figure out what that would be. And with Nosy Crow, we kind of worked out what my next book will be about. I can't really say what that is just yet, but I can say that it's going to be a really fun topic to illustrate. And I think it'll fit nicely within the series of the other 2 books that I've made already. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted was to feel more positive about my work in 2021. I mentioned that in 2020, I really felt disconnected from my work. In 2021, I really did enjoy my illustration work a whole lot more. So I achieved that. And the last goal that I listed was finding a way to combine my passions of illustration and running. And I don't think this really materialized, but I'm okay with that because, running is supposed to be my escape from work. It's supposed to be my sort of something I can do without it being about work or about anything else. It's mostly just for my health and to feel good. And so running is always a success, whether it turns into a money thing or not. Now, in terms of my 2022 goals, I'm going to write that book this year. That's my goal for this year. I'm going to write my book this year. It's going to be on a different topic though. And I have the topic, I have the kind of seed of the magazine, of the book, the concept. And I'm looking forward to actually getting into writing that this year. I'm going to produce 2 Skillshare classes. So the first is going to be this class I already described, the one about illustrating for clients. And the second one will be, I don't know. One idea I have is to create a class about composition. I know a lot of people struggle with knowing how to arrange things on the page. And that's a very hard topic to teach. I've avoided it thus far, but it might be the year that I do that. The other thing I want to do is redesign my website. My website is okay, but it doesn't really represent who I am right now in terms of my career and what I want to do. I want to set it up less as Tom Froese, the illustrator, more as Tom Froese, the illustrator who teaches and speaks and is doing things like this on YouTube. So I'm going to be working on a new face for the internet on my website this year. I've talked about my goal this year. I want to reach 30K subscribers. You guys can really help me with that. Like and subscribe. And I want to grow my community on Patreon and Discord. I don't really have specific goals beyond that, beyond just learning more about how to use this platform, connecting more with my audience, and just keep my eyes open for opportunities that can come from this. And, one thing I think I'd like to see is more of a merger between my activity on between my audiences on Patreon and here on YouTube. I want to see a way of making these things more cohesive and come together. And I think the reason is I'm enjoying the the level of engagement and communication back and forth with my patrons. I'm enjoying that on Patreon, and I'm always a little bit. I don't want. I'll say I feel like there should be more comments in these on my videos, and I own the fault. Like I own the responsibility for making videos that elicit more comments, but it's the comments that I really covet on my videos. I want to make videos that incite more conversation, that encourage more conversation between between viewers and between viewers and myself. And so I kind of see it as like, if people aren't commenting on my videos, I'm not making videos that are that interesting. I don't know if that's a fair assessment, but I feel like the more interesting and engaging the content, the more likely people are to comment. And the reason I want comments is just I want to feel that engagement between the content I'm making and the people that are viewing it. I really hope that my videos aren't just like dry information that people passively consume and move on to the next. I want it to somehow really reach people's hearts and really make a difference for them. And I feel like the proof is in when people actually start engaging with the content through things like comments. So another goal that I'm setting is kind of silly, is to draw every day just for 5 minutes, because you know, my style isn't super drawing based. It's very naive and blocky. But as my daughters are getting older, they're calling me out more on how their illustrator dad doesn't really draw realistically. And I don't know why that bothers me. I want to prove to them that I can. And I used to be able to draw a lot better. I've never been like a very academic drawer, but I'm trying to just get back into that feeling of the mindset of drawing from life, which is very different from drawing from your imagination and drawing in a highly stylized way. So that will take shape every day on my Instagram account. So that Instagram is Drawing is Important. I'll leave a link in the show notes. I can't really get it up on my screen just yet for some reason, but it's an account that I started a few years ago, and then I stopped, but I've been re-inspired to keep it going. So yeah, that's my 2021 year in review post in summary in video format. If you want to really go deep into it, I talk about things like what percentage of my earnings is from Skillshare, what's from client work and stuff like that. So if you're interested in those kinds of details and all the stuff that, you know, matters to me as an illustrator, please go check it out at tomfroze.medium.com. I'll leave a link to this also, of course, in the video description. Anyway, thank you for watching all the way to the end. So yeah, hopefully my annual report maybe even inspired you guys to think about reflecting on your past year. I really think this is a valuable exercise to do. It really helps you know, you can assess what you've been learning, you can assess where you are, and it gives you a sense of direction moving forward. And I also find that it helps me be more grateful and thankful for all the successes, rather than just see the things that I thought I failed in. I think my tendency is to dwell on the things that I didn't do right. And doing something like this every year, I'm like, yeah, a lot of good came out of that year. I'm very thankful, no matter whether it's a failure or a success. So thank you for watching. My name's Tom Froze. I'll see you in the next one.